Cody, what is your topic for this evening?
My topic is third-party esports tournaments. Specifically, in this case, a third-party Fortnite tournament, which took place recently, and was actually canceled due to griefers. This story comes courtesy of Polygon, Cass Marshall, fantastic writer. And it's all about the Vanish Cup, which is they bill it as one of the larger third-party solo Fortnite tournaments in North America. And a key point of clarification for this is that it is an online tournament. It is not an in-person tournament. It's solos. The prize pool was around $3,000, which sort of pales in comparison to the number, like the cash prize pools Epic offers. But for a third-party tournament, it's not terrible. But the whole thing sort of fell apart once three players who were operating under alt accounts decided to gather together and essentially collaborate on some griefing, grab a bunch of rocket launchers and basically just break the tournament rules, work together as a team and try to take down players. Their actions resulted in the tournament being canceled with no new date announced, although according to the tournament organizer, who operates under the name I'm Papa Max, there is a date set. They just haven't announced it yet. And so I kind of want to use this as an opportunity to talk about larger things, although I do think this is an interesting story of what can happen in esports when it's not in person, which is what we mostly talk about on this show. There is another side to esports tournaments. And in a lot of ways, it's a little bit more of an old school idea.
I love that something online is an old school idea.
I know. The whole dynamic in esports is so fascinating to me because, like, this is in no other. Well, I guess there's obviously cheating in traditional sports, but it's not like in the middle of a basketball game, two players from different teams decide to team up and somehow break the game. That just doesn't happen.
They're both holding onto the ball, just spinning around at half court.
Yeah. Griefing doesn't exactly happen because there's no anonymity in traditional sports. You know who they are. You're watching them in person. You see their face. It's just an interesting example of how, like, this particular corner of the esports world, there's still potential for the world to break in ways that are interesting when you're thinking about an industry that's trying to get its feet underneath it and trying to become more legitimate. What do you guys think? Because the article, does mention a few ways that online tournaments can be advantageous for tournament organizers and players. But what do you guys think of the concept of an online esports tournament, especially in the world of esports today?
I like it in terms of it provides accessibility to something that I think a lot of people, like, trying to enter that kind of scene might not have access to.
Definitely.
So that's really cool, but I don't think you're ever going to have, like, any top tier tournament happen online just because of this. If it's not griefing, it's something else. It's impossible to secure something like that perfectly. And so putting people in an environment where they're all in the same building, you know who everybody is, got control over the network, like, that's the only way to have this thing with any level of consistency.
Yeah, well, and online tournaments are certainly not just kind of small potatoes either, in terms of, even this event was going to have massive viewership, but the, like, Overwatch Contenders is all online. So there's massive. That's a massive competitive league that's officially not licensed. What's the It's an official Blizzard Blizzard League. I don't know, but it is still. I mean, like everything in esports, it's still very much a wild west. I think one of the things that's mentioned, one of the quotes in here that I found kind of interesting was from. Okay, let me ask this as an aside, guys. I'm a huge esports fan, but I still struggle with calling these individuals by their tags. Like
I do too.
Like I'm watching Worlds, and there's like the Shy and Showmaker people. It like, I don't know, there's a part of me, old school okay boomer me, that wants to be like, just use your real names, please. All right, I don't want to fucking call you Hydration. Let's just call you by your given name. How do you guys feel about that?
I like the use of the gamer tag, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not as old as you are.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of laughed when I was talking about the tournament organizer's name by accident, but
that's true.
It's just because sometimes the names themselves run counter to the legitimacy that the sport and the industry as a whole is trying to achieve. But like, I do like the idea of like names and identities are somewhat different in the world of online gaming. They always have been, and so I think carrying that over is, for me, I think super interesting and kind of honors like the legacy of where this stuff is coming from. There should probably be a screening method, and I obviously there is, but like there's actually an esports sketch on SNL, I think last week, with Chance the Rapper. And I think there's a whole bit in it where he's like a traditional sports announcer, and he's been tasked with covering this esports event. And he's interviewing a player after the match, and he tells the player to turn around. And what's the player's name? It's on the back of their jersey. It's something like Panda Sex or something like that.
Panda Sex 6'9" or something like that.
He's like, nope, not going to say that. But I don't know. I think if you're trying to find legitimacy as in a traditional audience, you're going to struggle, but I don't know if they're 100% doing that. I think it's an interesting element of esports. It's an interest. You can build up like a cult of personality around it too. There's a whole branding aspect of it. So
I don't think it's totally foreign to traditional sports. I mean, granted, some people change their names completely in real life, like Meta World Peace.
Yes.
Yeah, Chad Ochocinco.
They're nicknames, but it's not like there's some ridiculous ones in esports. Well,
I think about like the Toronto off tank FRD. Before that, in contenders, he was Fried Winner, with all of the vowels removed, and they made him change it from what it was originally, which was Fried Wiener.
Of course. Of course.
So there is a little bit of QA that goes in.
There has to be.
Choosing these names and allowing them into these official channels, but it just makes it weird because I'm Papa Max makes a great point.
Yeah, it makes it awkward when you're reading it out loud.
Well, there's a caster, which he now is like the GM for 100 Thieves, but he's a league caster called Papa Smithy, and everyone just calls him Papa, and it's just strange to me. It's strange.
Yeah, disconcerting.
Roy Speedrun says, "Really? I think the tags are pretty fun. It's fun."
He says rappers have their dumbass names. Why can't we?
What did he say?
He said rappers have their dumbass names. Why can't we? I guess if somebody can be Soulja Boy, I can be Panda Sex 69. All right. Anyway, I'm Papa Max. Makes a great point in a quote here. He says, quote, "We pulled, it was like 35,000 or 40,000 viewers, I believe, throughout all players' streams." And you're just like, that's all exposure for the game itself. I think Epic just has zero regard for third-party tournaments and creating a system where we can create a custom event and invite all the players to remove these risks, end quote. And I think that's just, that's a great point that he's making. Like, third-party tournaments are not just a great grounds for players to get their feet wet, And like I grew up playing sports, organized sports, and I miss the competition. I don't have time to join like a rec league and go play because they're practicing at like 4:00 in the afternoon. I've thought a lot about joining an esports team that plays in these kind of third party tournaments. So it's a great opportunity just to have fun, get some experience in organized play, but it's also a great opportunity for observers, like the people who control the in-game cameras to get their stuff, for casters to get experience within it. They're pulling these resources together and creating these productions voluntarily, but it is bringing massive exposure. There's a big company called Broadcast GG that does a lot of Overwatch content in contenders, especially in some of the more undercovered regions like South America. And I think for a while they were pulling all of those resources together for free just from people who wanted to get experience doing it. And I think that companies would be wise to recognize the exposure that's being given to their games because of these. And these are companies who profit off of exposure in the opposite direction. And so they should be well familiar with how important these things are and how many eyes it can bring. And I think just the disregard for it from up top is something I'm glad that I'm Papa Max noted.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that's something that Epic is noting as well. I know someone at Epic made a statement recently saying that they would invest. Part of their plan moving forward with esports is to invest a little bit more in third-party tournaments, just to kind of like bolster them with some of Epic's resources. Because you're right, it's a great feeder system for esports talent on both in front of and behind the camera. And I think I don't mean to be flippant by saying this, but it is like I sort of think about, especially at this level and lower, like third-party tournaments are kind of like higher level intramural sports, which is great. I mean, I think it's great. Like as you said, Luke, you can find pretty much a third-party tournament for whatever you're feeling and for whatever level you're capable of playing at, which is pretty great. Like they're the more local things, there are more national things, more international things, but it's just a great opportunity to, I mean, the appeal of it is accessibility, like you said, Larry. There are obviously drawbacks, and this is a case of some of the drawbacks to it, but I think it would suit Epic and other developers and publishers whose games are being played in all these venues to kind of keep an eye on this stuff, and to not just shrug it off as, oh, it's not our esports league, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Ninja Squirrel?
I think I've already voiced them. The gamer tags are awesome. No, I love Epic's business model, right? Anytime anybody wants anything, yeah, we can do that.
Well, we got the money. We'll just hire 30 more people to be able to accomplish that. Sure.
I know that's not the point you're making, but no, I think that Epic would be wise for sure to invest in this and to make this easier. I'm just restating the same things you guys have already said. It only benefits them. There's no reason not to.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of curious overall about the future of these kinds of tournaments, because it and Luke, I think you'll have the most to say about this because you are sort of the most capable of prognosticating kind of where esports is headed. But it seems as the industry itself gets larger and larger, these tournaments simultaneously fill a very specific role within the industry, and also sort of the discrepancy gets larger and larger between like where developers are seeing their professional leagues going and where these tournaments are going. Obviously they fulfill different needs, but I think more and more developers are investing in their own leagues and kind of shrugging this stuff off, although Epic has done that and sort of starting to correct it. But where do you see the future of third-party tournaments going as this industry just kind of balloons even more in the future?
See, I think I agree with you to an extent, but I also think there's a flip side of that coin where the exact opposite is true. Where there are so many, I think about, especially like Overwatch and League have such powerful observation tools built into their just standard client. You don't have to have any additional software to be able to create a quality broadcast. You just need 3 or 4 different people who hop in as observers, being able to check out different places and know how to run OBS. If you watch the Overwatch World Cup over the weekend, you saw casters had, let me see if I've got enough slack. They had these things on their desks, and they were running their own broadcasts while they casted the games, like switching between scenes and pulling up graphics. They weren't doing all of the observing and stuff. But my point is that the tools are so accessible anymore that creating a quality broadcast at any level is achievable. And I think because of that, we're in look, Overwatch, I think, is maybe an outlier example because their esports are so poorly run, especially once you get beyond the Overwatch League level. All of their tier 2, tier 3 shit is just scuffed. The Overwatch World Cup, scuffed. Like, I don't know if you guys saw any criticism around the Overwatch World Cup, but it was a nightmare. Teams spending $60,000 to fly halfway across the world, get bounced after playing for an hour and a half. Like, because they only played one preliminary game in a single elimination tournament or whatever, like scuffed. But I say all that to say Overwatch has handed a lot of their production, especially in the tier 2 and almost exclusively in the tier 3, over to like Broadcast GG, these people who are doing these, who were hosting third-party tournaments, who are being brought into the fold, not as like employees of the company to do this, but like kind of as official partners. And it's I'm sure it's a way of shaving costs. Like Broadcast GG foots the bill for bringing all the talent together, and I'm sure they get some sort of kickback from Blizzard for producing these things. But I worry with it that it's going to become an excuse for the bigger companies to just say, we are going to solely focus on the top 1% of the top 1% of talent in these games, and to hell with everything else. There are other people who are willing to do it for free, and we don't have to invest in it. And so I think to answer your question, I think third-party tournaments are going to just grow in their popularity and their significance. And as smaller companies who aren't getting their foot into the door, like in terms of sponsorship, get a hold of these, hey, that's 50,000 eyes that can get on my brand from this Fortnite tournament who may not have an official sponsor. Like, it becomes a whole other like influencer marketing opportunity almost.
Yeah, I think you are right about the accessibility. And I think that can be a great gift and also kind of a curse in some ways, and that because the technology is so accessible, it means that anybody can get it, which means that there are so many people out there doing it. But that also means that the people will always the cream always finds a way to rise to the top. That means people are going to have to be more creative, more talented, and kind of more personable to be able to grab people's attentions with these kinds of things. And maybe it'll mean that there'll be more specialized tournaments that kind of have a gimmick or have a specific draw for people. The more that there are, but I do tend to agree with you. I don't mean to come across as saying that like it's the end of third-party tournaments are going to disappear because all these big companies are investing in their own like professional leagues. I think they both fit. They both meet a different need, and I think it's important to have both. I think it creates a healthier ecosystem overall, and it creates a healthier pipeline for talent as well.
Yeah. Speaking of personalized tournaments, if somebody gets a May Snowball Offensive tournament off the ground, I am in.
I'm sure you can find it, man. I'm sure you can find it. Join like, I'm not kidding. If that's something you would want to do, you could join like Jane's Discord. They're doing pugs and all kinds of shit all the time over there. So, and they host tournaments and, I think they have even like mock leagues that go on. So there's a world for
champion May Snowball offensive player Ninja Squirrel.
That's right.
The May is Bay tournament.
That's right. With his comments on Hong Kong coming right up.
Only Hong Kong all the time.
Yeah, it's and also with esports growing, there are so many people climbing on top of each other to try to get to the top, and it's just creating a more and more of an opportunity for prices to just be undercut and the bottom of the market to fall out, because hey, there's tons of people just doing this shit for free. Like, why pay?
Yeah, there's only going to be room for one person to ascend to the Conan O'Brien of esports coverage.
That's right. So I don't know. I love esports. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's interesting because there really isn't like a traditional sports equivalent like we become so comfortable trying to find. You know, I guess the closest thing would be like, oh, there's an undergirding like amateur scene in basketball and football within the collegiate system that has been long taken advantage of in a pretty predatory way, which is hopefully coming to an end. So, but that's really the only equivalent. But that's not something that you can't create a college football team from your basement. All right? Yeah, you can create a third-party esports tournament that is wildly successful from the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to have pants on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the farther along in esports life cycle we get, and the bigger it becomes, the less and more useful the analogs to traditional sports become. It's just interesting. The conversation around this stuff fascinates me too. I'm not as knowledgeable about it, but even as someone who just has a cursory knowledge, this stuff, I mean, the future of it is interesting and problematic in so many ways.
I saw you drop an esports topic into the show notes. I was like, hell yeah, I get to talk about esports and it's not me bringing it up.
We got to cover each other sometimes.